What if the dream of owning a sunny second home in Florida is starting to fade for our northern neighbors? More on that in a minute. Canadians, once the most enthusiastic international buyers in the U.S. real estate market, are pulling back in a big way. Why? A storm of tariffs, political tension, and bold rhetoric is shaping up the housing market, and is hitting some American cities harder than others. What exactly triggered this dramatic shift? How are Trump's new tariffs playing into the equation? And which cities are feeling the burn the most? Let's break down this geopolitical showdown and how it's transforming the way Canadians see U.S. real estate, and why some markets may never be the same again. Hi everyone, Joe Hillner here with Guaranteed Home Sales, and welcome to this week's Boca Raton Real Estate Market Watch. Canada has long been the #1 source of international home buyers in the U.S. Whether it's escaping the brutal winters or investing in warm weather getaways, Canadians have played a crucial role in shaping real estate demand, especially in states like Florida and Arizona. Cities such as Naples, Florida became seasonal havens where more than 70% of international home search traffic used to come from Canadian buyers. These were not just casual browsers. Many were serious investors or retirees seeking a second home. But that dominance is now facing serious headwinds. According to Realtor.com's most recent international demand report, Canadian interest in U.S. properties has taken a notable plunge. In just a few months between the end of 2024 and the beginning of 25, online traffic from Canadian buyers dropped from 41% to 35%. This isn't just a statistical blip, it's a trend, and a meaningful one. Behind these numbers lies a shift in sentiment. Canadians are starting to question whether the U.S. is still the right place for property investment. Political uncertainty, rising tariffs, and new travel restrictions are making it harder and less appealing for Canadians to commit to U.S. properties. The long-standing tradition of snowbirds, Canadians flying south to ride out the winter months, has been more than just a cultural phenomenon. It represented billions of dollars flowing into real estate markets, seasonal tourism, and local economies. But now, with fewer buyers and travelers, cities like Fort Lauderdale, Phoenix, and Tampa may face slower sales and potentially falling prices in their high-end markets. This retreat doesn't just impact the buyers, it affects real estate agents, developers, and entire local economies that had come to rely on the dependable influx of Canadian capital. The question is, can they adapt? So what exactly caused this sudden chill in cross-border real estate enthusiasm? Big part of it comes down to one word: tariffs. Under President Trump's trade policies, Canadian goods, especially materials critical to the housing industry, have become targets. It started with a 25% tariff on Canadian steel and aluminum, components used in everything from home construction to appliances. Then came an additional 10% on certain energy imports. These moves weren't just economic strategies, they were statements, and they sparked real friction. On May 30th, Trump doubled down, announcing that tariffs on Canadian steel and aluminum would be doubled, effective June 4. That meant higher costs not only for home builders in the U.S., but for Canadian investors hoping to buy or renovate homes south of the border. Imagine planning to build a retirement dream home in Florida, only to see the price of materials spike overnight. Those additional costs chip away at the affordability and appeal of U.S. real estate purchases. But the financial strain isn't the only issue. In March, Trump's administration introduced a new rule requiring foreign nationals staying in the U.S. longer than 30 days to register with authorities. This includes many Canadian snowbirds who traditionally spend the entire winter season in Florida. Suddenly, what had been a relaxing and routine escape turned into a bureaucratic hassle, raising concerns about privacy and convenience. Then there's the rhetoric. Trump has repeatedly floated the provocative idea that Canada should become America's 51st state. Comments that were met with outrage across Canada and strongly rebuffed by the Prime Minister. The political friction is no longer just background noise. It's influencing real estate financial decisions. All these factors combined have created an environment where Canadian buyers feel less like welcome investors and more like political pawns. Their response? Step back from the U.S. housing market. The numbers speak volumes. Canadian interest is down across all the top 20 U.S. housing markets, but some cities are seeing more dramatic drop-offs than others. Naples, Florida, for example, once the crown jewel of Canadian second home buying, Naples has seen the steepest fall. In the fourth quarter of 2024, Canadians made up over 73% of international traffic. By early 25, that number is just 59%, a staggering 13.5 percentage point drop in only a few months. The impact is real. Local developers and tourism businesses are already reporting noticeable slowdown. And Naples isn't alone. Nearby Northport, Florida saw a similar decline, down 13 points, Cape Coral down 11 points, and Tampa dropped 10%. These are not just rounding errors. They're sharp, measurable declines in attention and interest, especially from one of the most reliable buyer groups. Phoenix, Arizona, another long-standing favorite among Canadians, saw the third largest drop overall. Its share of Canadian traffic shrank by nearly 12 points. Even Detroit, separated from Canada Canada by just the Detroit River lost 10 percentage points of Canadian views between the end of 24 and early 25. This downturn in interest is being felt well beyond the real estate platforms. At a Collier County tourism meeting, officials revealed a 23% drop in Canadian visitors in February alone. That's not just a housing issue, it's an economic signal. Hotels, restaurants, local shops, they all feel the ripple. Miami, surprisingly, remains an exception to the trend. It retained its title as the top U.S. market for international homebuyers overall, drawing almost 9% of foreign traffic. But that success is likely due to its broader international appeal, not necessarily Canadian interest. What's clear is that the cooling trend isn't isolated to one market. It's part of a wider shift. The question is no longer whether Canadians are pulling back, but how deep and how long this retreat will last. Canadian backlash to Trump's aggressive policies hasn't been subtle. What began as a frustration over tariffs has evolved into a broader sense of alienation. Across media, political circles, and everyday conversations, there is growing resentment toward the way Canadian interests are being treated. Prime Minister Mark Carney's blunt response to Trump's 51st state remark, quote, "Canada will never be for sale," unquote, sparking applause across Canada and drawing a clear boundary in diplomatic terms. This wasn't just political theater, it was a serious expression of sovereignty in the face of provocation. Canadian consumers are also responding with their wallets. Instead of investing U.S. properties, more are turning inward, either reinvesting in Canadian real estate or looking towards other international markets like Mexico, Portugal, and even parts of South America, now attracting Canadian buyers who might have otherwise chosen U.S. destinations. This shift in sentiment is creating real consequences for U.S. regions that have historically depended on seasonal Canadian buyers to sustain demand, especially in winter months. Realtors in Florida have reported a noticeable slowdown in inquiries, and properties that once sold quickly are lingering on the market longer than ever expected. Real estate discussion boards and mainstream news outlets have reported increased skepticism and criticism of the U.S. among Canadian audiences. Calls to boycott Florida or skip the states are seen throughout social media in Canada, signaling a shift in the mindset that we cannot ignore. This isn't about politics anymore. It's about identity and trust. Canadians who once saw the U.S. as a friendly, accessible extension of their lifestyle are starting to question that assumption. And when that trust erodes, so does the motivation to buy, travel, or invest. So what does this mean for the U.S. housing market, especially in the high-interest regions like Florida and Arizona? For starters, the absence of Canadian buyers is softening competition. In places like Naples and Miami and Fort Lauderdale, where luxury condos and vacation homes once sold like hotcakes, there's a growing inventory, fewer bidding wars. In fact, prices are dropping. Agents are reporting properties sitting longer and longer on the market, something unheard of just a year ago. Open houses that once packed in crowds are like zombie land. This could mark the beginning of a recalibration, particularly in the luxury and second home markets. Tourism-heavy areas are feeling the ripple. Fewer Canadian visitors mean fewer rentals, less foot traffic for businesses, and reduced seasonal economic activity. For economies around used to the snowbird influx, restaurants, golf courses, local shops having a hard time staying afloat. If political tensions persist and Canadians continue to retreat, long-term impacts include reduced investment, slower growth, and a rethink of how to attract international buyers in the future. This isn't just a pause. It could be the start of a fundamental shift in how foreign investment shapes key U.S. housing markets. Tariffs, political tension, and policy shifts have combined to create a moment of reckoning, not just for Canadian investors, but for American real estate professionals, developers, and local economies. While the shift might be short-term opportunities for domestic buyers, the long-term picture is less certain. Will Canadian interest rebound, or are we witnessing a permanent pullback from one of the U.S.'s most loyal buyer bases? We'll be watching these trends closely. In the meantime, if you found this breakdown insightful, drop a comment with your thoughts on the topic and subscribe for more in-depth real estate insights. If you'd like some specific market data on your neighborhood, just send me a text or give us a call at 954-799-6867. We'll send you the free, no obligation report. Till this next time, this is Joe Hillner with Guaranteed Home Sales signing off for now. Go serve big, everybody. Be nice to each other, and I'll see you next week.